like I say, I run the Center for the Future of Work in a technology company, and it's quite a tough job, I have to say. I didn't realize I'd be living through such a major change or revolution in how we think about what we do, how we live, and how we work. So I've been charged to try and help you and your peers and our clients and who we want to do business with, try and think through what the center of work will actually look like. And I have to say, I don't think anyone really understands what's happening. So most of these leaders are absolutely clueless. Perhaps Macron is the only one you could sort of say, yeah, you know what, he's got some good ideas, some interesting thoughts on how society should be. But if you look at where I'm from, we are clueless. We're kind of going through mud, trying to figure out what this whole new world looks like. But I have to say, this lady has some very interesting ideas, and she's one lady I really respect in Europe, who I think has got some very good sense for what this region needs to do. So she has a fascinating quote. She talks about where we live in Europe. She says, you know what? Europe has 7% of the world's population. It has 25% of the world's GDP. But guess how much we spend on welfare in this part of the world? Now, I throw this open. This is where I make it interactive, and I ask you to say... I can't hear you. Yeah, 50%. That's absolutely right. Europe spends 50% in the world on welfare. That just can't go on. This is one of the reasons I think some of these new tools and technologies, some of these new ways of working that you're beginning to read about all the time, that's where they're starting to really catch attention. So Mrs. Merkel is actually right. She knows that our way of life is going to have to change. How we think about how we live, how we medicate ourselves, how we educate ourselves, how we, survive as a species. Maybe that's going a little bit far ahead, but suffice to say, she knows that Europe really is under pressure. She knows our industries have to change, and some of those tools, technologies, and new ways of working are going to be led by you, not by me. So, yeah, I'm 50, so I can't believe Tara is 34. I was amazed when she said she was 34, so I think we've got quite a well-preserved life in the UK. We don't work quite as hard as most people think we do. But suffice to say, Europe gets that things are changing. I did a really big survey last year to understand from the business exactly what sort of technologies and what sort of forces were going to change. So before you throw rotten fruit at me and eggs, I am from the corporate world, but I have to have some sort of vision or some sort of feel, really, for how our largest clients are beginning to think about this. And what's really interesting is those at the top of these organizations are looking at digital tools as a way of changing how they work. Analytics, algorithms, that's all about data. It's all about understanding how our processes work, how our business models work. Artificial intelligence, I was really surprised at just how high that's risen in such a small time. If you think about all the data that Christensen was talking about, there's incredible amounts of data that need sifted, sorted, stored. How do you do that? And that's what's beginning to happen more and more. So, what does it mean for the future of work? Well, there are some new rules beginning to emerge. You can sort of smell them or see them. And I have to say, the big one for me, the big aha when I think about the future of work and try to understand, what's going on, it's that platforms really matter. Now, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what a platform actually is. And the easiest one to know is the one that you use every day. And this is the one I use. And I don't know if you use, but if you've got a LinkedIn account, basically it's a platform that captures data about you and about what you like to do. So the thing to do is almost think about the platform as a layer of software that captures data about you and shares that data and co-creates with that data and innovates with that data. That's really what a platform does. So when LinkedIn sees you, it sees some really interesting things about what you like to do and what you like to, possibly work on, and how many times you change your job in your career. So that's my almost my digital twin that talks about what I'm about. The bits which others are interested in are the fact that I'm pretty good with numbers. I've done a lot of research. I speak a bit of Spanish, so I'm going to watch that film. But also, I generally shift around every 3 years. So right now, I'm starting to get some very interesting stuff coming into my LinkedIn feed, which I never thought I would see. But these platforms are not just about you or me. These layers of software are growing around the places where we live, the homes that we're in. You just have to think about what this can do in the home to understand just how powerful a company like Amazon is becoming and how scary I actually think that world is starting to prove. Samsung got taken to court 2 years ago for using its TVs to listen into people's conversations in their homes. Europe fined Google 2.9 billion a couple of days ago because it's not using data in a very ethical way. These are questions which the next generation is really going to have to figure out. And these platforms are emerging around everything: processes, products, services, clients, cities. It's all about layers of data which are telling some very interesting things about the products we drive and the places we live. So BMW really has recognized that the platform is the organizing principle for how it works. And so it designed this very ugly interface that you can probably think, you know what, that would never happen in our world. But imagine if a real designer got hold of that instead of a bunch of engineers saying, this is what we think it should look like. And this is why BMW has said it needs 5,000 data scientists in Munich. That gives you a bit of a signpost, really, for how that future of work is beginning to look. Now, it's not all about data. BMW has only found 30 so far. There ain't 5,000 data scientists in Europe, let alone in Munich. Yet BMW said, this is where we think the future of our company is. Another company says, we really want to understand cities. We really want to understand how this city operates. We will have some very interesting correlations, surge pricing. We will begin to use algorithms to really change our pricing model to give our organization value. So if you understand how platforms are beginning to grow everywhere, in your personal lives, in our work lives, in our residential homes, layers of software that are capturing data, and through the data is power. That is, I would argue, one of the first major rules for work for the future. Now, the second one is a little bit tricky because it's about machines. You've probably heard an awful lot about robots and droids, and they're going to take all our jobs. They're not. They're going to do some dumb things that we really don't want to do anymore. So last year, the BBC had a very interesting test to see, will a robot take your job? And I put my job in there, and I was quite shocked that, yes, it would. So there is actually smart software that can write very creative thought leadership about technology trends, and it's automated. So you worry and think, well, this is a massive, massive shift, and it's a shift that's happening much quicker than we predicted. So that's just some of the headlines you've seen over the last, I would say, 6 months on how AI is beginning to move. But just to give you an idea of what that looks like, in Hong Kong, there's a venture capital firm. I told you it was from the corporate world. I'm really sorry. But there's a venture capital firm called Deep Knowledge Ventures. And it's got 5 board members, 5. And it's just added a 6th, which is a robot. Yeah, I know. So 5 plus 1. Now, this robot is an algorithm. It crunches through data, and when they propose, or when someone pitches a new product, I think it's drug design, they do a new drug or pharmaceutical product or process, the robot has an equal vote as the other 5 people. So the fact that this company has a robot on the board that has an equal vote, I think is a sign of things to come. And it's beginning to happen here as well. So I told you I'm from London. London's having a lot of problems recently. It's really sad to see. It's heartbreaking, actually. And not just London, the UK, but if you look at, say, how some of these tools are being used in security, then you start thinking, well, maybe that's not such a bad thing. But when you go to somewhere like Dubai, where they've actually got these robocops there, it's actually quite scary. So Dubai has launched a number of robocops which actually are at the side of the road, and you pay speeding fines to them as you go past. So they know your car number. They have really sophisticated face recognition technology that understands who the occupants are, and they can chase you down until you pay your fine. They've also begun to use some very interesting sensors to understand exactly when someone's looking threatening versus someone's getting angry versus someone's resigned to pay their fine. This is the shape of things to come. Now, I'm not suggesting the UK or Europe or Amsterdam should think like that. And it's quite worrying that Dubai doesn't actually allow women to drink in bars. They have to sit somewhere else. I'm not sure I want this kind of technology in my country, but there's elements of it which I think, you know what, maybe we should be thinking how this is going to play out. So, how do you see the future of work? Well, if you're all jazz hands and really excited about it, you sort of think, well, you know what, there's an awful lot of technology we can use, virtual reality, augmented reality, and how we think about engagement. There's the art of the possible, all sorts of new jobs are beginning to emerge. But on the other side, there's fear, real fear about layoffs, company structures, and what those industries of the future will actually look like. I think we're going to go halfway. Some of the arguments you're seeing around universal income have been very well received here in Europe. Finland's doing a lot of experimentation about universal income. The Swiss even had a referendum on it, and they defeated it. But the fact that they had a referendum on universal income and basic income support for everyone, I thought was very, very interesting. On the whole, though, I think there's a lot of opportunity for some of those new industries of the future. The connected car isn't that long away. It's about 5 years away. And we did some work today, and you can actually drive an automated vehicle from Rome to Liverpool. It's just that the regulation needs to carry on. So if you think about the build-out of what that means in terms of the infrastructure to support that, in terms of the interfaces to the driver, to the authorities, there's an awful lot of work that's going to happen to try and retool what our futures look like. So I am an optimist. I don't think jobs are going to disappear, but I think jobs are digitizing. And what's important for you is to understand which bits we're good at and which bits some of these machines are good at. Something like healthcare, something like, entertainment. These are all the new industries of the future, and they're going to change. New jobs are emerging, new industries are emerging, and I would recommend to watch Black Mirror on Netflix to understand how some of those new roles will emerge and how we as a people can prevent the worst things happening to us. With that, I'd like to say thank you, and thanks for your time.